everyone, welcome to the 292nd episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a really great show for you today. We're going to be talking about Forrester's new IoT report, a new gadget that I received to track my health. Woof, it's a doozy. We've got an Arduino kit that you'll want to hear about. We're going to be talking about recyclability of our devices, and the FCC has made some new unlicensed spectrum available, so we'll share a little bit about what that means for you. We've also got some little bits of news from Amazon, Mercedes, Google Home, and SpaceX. Plus, Kevin has got his hands on the brand new Wyze Cam version 3, which also, by the way, is out now as of yesterday. So we're going to talk about that. We also have our sponsor, Silicon Labs, talking about security in IoT devices. And our guest this week is Nate Clark, the CEO of Connected, which makes a DIY system device which connects to your existing dumb alarm panel. So Nate is a really fun guest, and he shares a lot about what's happening in the back end with smart things transitioned as well from the perspective of a developer. So we're going to have all of this and maybe even a little bit more this week on the show. But first, let's hear from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Very, and Very really wants y'all to enter to win the Best of the Smart Home Awards. So I would love for y'all, if you have an idea for a connected product, there's many different categories you can win in. There's awards for the best UX for mobile, best hardware, best AI feature, lots of categories here and lots of options to win. So go to bestofthesmarthome.com and apply. That contest is going to close on December 4th. And if you enter, I will be judging you. That was supposed to sound less robotic and more intimidating, but I am one of the judges, as is Rob Tiffany, who's the VP of IoT strategy at Ericsson. And so you're in good hands. Send us your stuff to bestofthesmarthome.com. And now, Kevin, let's get started with this Forrester IoT report. It came out on Wednesday, and basically, Forrester took a look at what's happening and said, wow, it is going to be really tough to pick a connectivity option. They said network connectivity chaos will reign. But basically what they're saying is, holy mackerel, we have a lot of options. Not only do we have the traditional smart home options like Z-Wave, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, we're also seeing the entrance of things like ultra wideband, using NFC for new use cases. But then we're also adding 5G. There's not just one 5G out there. There's bunches of 5G in different spectrum bands. There's also going to be private 5G networks. And then, just for fun, let's throw in some satellite networks and low power wide area networks.
I think the backhaul type things, 4G, 5G, satellites, I don't think that's going to bring much chaos. I think the bigger issue is the same issue we've always had in IoT, and that is getting these endpoint devices connected to the internet and talking to each other.
Yes, although I will say their prediction here is, and this is a good one, they expect interest in satellite and other low-power networking technologies to increase by 20% in the coming year. I'm with it, man. Long-range connectivity for LoRa or Sidewalk. Okay.
Super Uber LoRaWAN. Maybe we'll extend the range even further next year.
All right. Other things that will happen. A lot of these are COVID related. So COVID has really thrown us for a loop, but for the IoT, it's been a big opportunity. So they think, hey, connected device makers, they're going to double down on healthcare. I agree with that.
Don't you think they already have once or twice in the past year or two, though?
Okay, so here's the deal with digital healthcare. I once sat in 2005 and listened to Intel's CEO at the time, Paul Otellini, talk on stage for an hour about connected healthcare. And in 2005, it was a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
I was 15 years younger, and I believed him. And only now do I actually believe that this is happening. There's a bunch of reasons, but the technology has been around for a while. The form factor has only gotten more convenient. It has only gotten cheaper. But COVID, up until then, the other thing that, the big thing was like, oh, do doctors want to use it? Is the use case there? And then they started getting more interested in it. And with COVID, what happened is the doctors are glomming onto it because their patients are demanding it and because the payment structure has changed. So now you can deliver remote healthcare and get paid the same amount as you used to.
Okay. That is a big reason for more adoption now. Okay, that makes more sense.
So I think that's going to really, when we say double down, I really think that's going to change. It is going to bring a whole host of new issues. So things like, oh, hey, are these devices actually useful? Like doctors, should they prescribe me a Fitbit, an Apple Watch? What? I don't know.
That's one thing that I'd like to see some consolidation around, because different doctors have different portals and apps and can work with certain devices that you can link to your health records, but not other devices. Like I show them like my heart rate and stuff, and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. You've got 6 months of data, but let me just check your heart rate now. They don't even want to see the data.
They're like, ooh, neat. Never mind.
Yeah. Nice graph. Nice graph. Now roll up your sleeve.
Next, other IoT prediction, smart offices will transform the employee experience. I feel like that's a little... Transform is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. It's probably not going to be awesome. So Forrester is expecting, things like connected devices that will track social distancing and help enforce it. They're also looking at things like environmental monitoring for helping prioritize cleaning. So again, COVID-19 is going to change the office a little bit. And then finally, they say that the near ubiquity of connected machines will finally disrupt traditional business. And the idea here is that we're going to see different business models. We're going to see a lot more use in companies taking advantage of not sending workers out if they don't have to because they can do remote diagnostics. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is a prediction that we've had every year. So I'm like, eh.
Yeah, but now that people may not be able to send workers out because of travel restrictions and such, maybe that will raise the adoption a little bit more.
That's possible. So again, COVID may do some crazy things.
It's definitely pushing us forward in certain technologies and approaches faster than we would have.
And I do see, so in the newsletter for the last 2 weeks, I've actually written about companies, ServiceNow and Honeywell and Microsoft, pushing technology that connects the field workforce to these back-end systems that are doing monitoring, all the kind of AIoT systems. It's clear that the industry is developing the tools and getting ready to try to push this out to people. So, okay, maybe I'm less skeptical. And then final prediction, customer and employee location data will be core to convenience. Basically, it's talking about, it's not exactly as much as like drone delivery, but what they're saying is, look, companies are going to know where you are. They're going to help you avoid lines. They're going to give you real-time assessments of like the people in a place. So maybe it's safe to go, maybe it won't. So they're going to really need to use that location data. And I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think we've already seen some of that transformation now with mobile ordering of goods and foods. And then you show up at a certain time. You don't even have to call and say, I'm here, because the app might have location data that says, hey, this customer's here, get that stuff out the door. Yes, I don't disagree with them. I think that's probably more of a 2020 thing, second half of 2020 thing that's happening right now.
Well, all of these are kind of, as predictions go, none of them are like super wild and crazy.
That's probably why the title is Predictions 2021. They didn't really stick their necks out too far.
This is it. But, I'm okay with that because COVID, no one predicted that. And COVID is such a sea change, like in terms of how we're trying to adapt to it and figure out how to keep the economy running, how to keep people safe. This is, if you had asked me a year ago what 2021 was going to look like, or even 2020, I would not have come up with this.
This is not IoT related, but since you brought up the change and COVID and the unexpectedness, my wife had an interview yesterday for a job, and she didn't meet with anybody. Literally, she signed into an app, and they posed the questions on the screen, and she did a video recording of herself answering the questions, which I think is very efficient, but that allowed a HR person to be doing something else or not have to be in a location to take a call and do an interview, and she didn't have to go to an office to do the interview. So a little weird, but yeah.
That is weird. Okay, enough about the future. Let's talk about my present, which is really a present to myself. I purchased a Whoop band. Doo-doo.
Whoop, there it is.
Whoop, here it is. It's on my wrist. And we're talking about it this week. One, because I got mine last week. But two, Whoop just raised $100 million. And our favorite company, SoftBank, is one of the investors. They are now valued at $1.2 billion, which is a heck of a lot of money. And so Whoop is a fitness band. It is not a fitness tracker. This is not something that tracks steps. It tries to understand what you do during a day, how well you sleep at night, and then tries to help you push further. And it also has a very unique business model. You don't actually buy the Whoop. You pay a $30 a month subscription. When you purchase the Whoop, what you're doing is you basically spend the 6-month subscription thing and then you get the band. So I'll be honest, I'm not sure I would pay $30 a month for the rest of the life of this, but I'm seeing. And right now, actually, I got a smoking hot deal. I got a month free. So, there's 30 days to try it out and return it if it's not for you.
That's actually not too bad because that's more than enough time to, especially if you already have another fitness tracker or trackers that you've used, to really do a comparison.
Yes and no. So here's where things get interesting. I'm only going to give you my first impressions of this device because I think I won't know how I feel about it for another, maybe even 2 weeks. So I've had it for 5 days. Okay, a couple things. One, this device is marketed towards athletes. Like college athletes use it, professional athletes use it. This is like hardcore. And I had been debating it actually because I am not hardcore. Many listeners of the show, though, are, and they love it. The other reason I got it, actually, I should tell you, not just because of the sale, or the temporary time to try it free, was because Amazon's Halo that they announced in September, I bought it, but it hasn't arrived yet. And it is very similar in design and I think kind of execution to the Whoop, except it is not for the hardcore people. Amazon's is very decidedly towards people who are just like, I would like not to die of obesity anytime soon, or the results of obesity. So back to the device. It is a band that is waterproof that goes around your wrist and has a sensor. It is a good sized thing. It's very similar to my Fitbit Charge 3 that I've been wearing for like 2 years. And it doesn't have a face on it. It's just the sensor, no display. And that actually kind of bothers me because I like looking at my watch. I know that everybody else has their smartphone, but I actually just like looking at a watch every now and then. But I'm getting over it slowly and surely.
I would guess they figure that people who want a watch could still wear a watch on their other wrist. This is just a utilitarian tracking fitness sensor.
Yeah.
But that's not your thing.
I'm waiting to see if the utility gets above that. So first of all, they have several metrics. This is not a metric that you're going to understand. They have the recovery score, which is basically what did you do yesterday and how well did you sleep? You're X% recovered, right, to do new activities. And that is based on your heart rate variability. They also have a score called strain, and that is like what you've done for the day, like how much work you've done for the day based on cardiovascular data. So if you weightlift a lot and you don't push your heart rate too high, your strain is going to be lower than maybe your actual strain is, I guess. It kind of depends on you. It is so hard, y'all. I have had to learn so many things because these are all super new to me and I don't even know. And it doesn't even start giving you great data until you've actually slept for like 4 days. So I'm just at the beginning of getting my coaching data. And basically my recovery sucks. And I think my recovery is probably impeded by stress and alcohol. And I'm not drinking heavily, but if you have a glass of wine or something, it definitely affects your sleep.
Yep.
And so I'm a little overwhelmed at the device. That's not a bad thing. I think the data could be really useful over time. But right now I'm all in and I am just like, they're like, would you like to learn how we calculate this? And I'm like, yes. And then they're like, here's a 45-minute podcast all about it. And I'm like, could you just put it in a couple paragraphs for me? But the podcasts are interesting. They're long, but interesting. So that's what I know.
I'm very curious to see what you think at the end of your 30 days. They have a lot of statistics on there showing what people have gained, such as more sleep or better sleep or more recovery time over a 4-month period. Their resting heart rate has gone down 4 beats per minute and so on and so forth. But I wanted to point out that much of what this offers, especially in the, I'll call it level of effort or strain, as well as sleep and recovery, Garmin actually does that. And it's a watch. My Garmin gives me all of that. That's very interesting that this is like a big we just raised $100 million worth $1 billion and all that.
Yeah, especially since Amazon's coming in with their own version of this. So we'll see. I mean, maybe I'm going to be hardcore, y'all. All right. That was a lot about Whoop. Probably too much about Whoop. Let's talk about Arduino Opla.
I guess that's how you say it.
I don't know.
The Opla Iot Kit, which was just announced this week. It is really interesting if you are a tinkerer. I won't say it's cheap. It's relatively inexpensive at $114. And what you're getting is a customized IoT development board that runs Arduino. You're getting access to program it through their online interface, which I have actually used for one of my classes. It's actually quite good. So you don't need to download software if you don't want to. It comes with a bunch of projects so that you can just go through them and learn, but you can do something like you can create a home security alarm, a personal weather station, a smart garden to manage, soil and such for your plants. So I would say it's more of a partially an education thing. I'd say mostly an educational thing. You're not going to prototype stuff with this, but no soldering, no nothing, has Wi-Fi and sensors. And I think it's great.
Cool. All right, guys, look for that. In other news, Google has now said that all made by Google products will use recycled materials, to which we're like, yay.
It's a good thing. It's just that they've been doing that. They're moving baby steps forward every product iteration. That's all.
And what we would like to see, because we've been thinking about this, and I just did an event on Tuesday of this week, and the videos will be up at www.stacyoniot.com/smarthome. So you can actually see the event, but we had one on sustainability, and there's a big disconnect with what companies are doing, which is using recycled materials, thinking about their supply chain, and what consumers want, which is, please help me get rid of these gadgets after I buy them and they become defunct. And I would like to see partnerships between maybe it's retailers and the big device makers, but I want to be able to decommission my device and get a box that says, hey, take this here to recycle it. That's all, please. Not everyone's going to recycle it. I get that, but this drives me bonkers. Anyway.
I mentioned this last week when we were talking about the new Amazon Echo devices that you were, reviewing. I'm like, I'm not going to replace all these speakers in my house just because a slightly better sounding one came out, because I don't want to contribute to the e-waste. And nobody takes these back. I've donated some.
Yeah, so it's not just slightly better sound for the original Echo to all right. It's a lot better sound. But yes, that I'm in that same position.
Yeah.
So, okay, Wi-Fi-ish news. Well, actually, it's Spectrum news, but I'm like, who cares about Spectrum news? But you will. This week, the FCC approved a plan to take the 45 megahertz in the lower 5.9 gigahertz band and use that for Wi-Fi, unlicensed, other fun stuff. So yay, that'll be awesome. And then they also said the upper 30 megahertz in that band, those are going to no longer be part of dedicated short range communications for cars, which was DSRC. They're going to make it go towards cellular vehicle to everything. And so what happened there is the DSRC band was approved way back in 2016, and the Trump administration just stopped it. He just didn't do anything with it. So I think that was more the automotive guys really focused on that. And then Qualcomm and some of the other folks were focused on this cellular vehicle to everything. And that is actually what's going to be used.
Yeah. Cars with coal don't need to talk to each other.
There's been a policy shift on wireless communication for cars happening here. And then there's also 45 more megahertz available in the unlicensed band that we're all excited about. So yay. Okay. That is the Spectrum news. Let us talk about just other little news. Amazon tablets. What's happening, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, the Amazon Fire tablets are really low-cost, entry-level, but solid devices for, media consumption and Madam A and so on. They are now getting better if you have a smart home, because Amazon is rolling out an update that basically puts a one-touch button on your Fire tablet to immediately launch a smart home device dashboard. I'm not going to lie, it looks an awful lot like the dashboard on my Nest products. I'm just saying. Doesn't matter. if you have Amazon in your house to run your smart home and you've got a Fire HD 8 tablet from 2018 or newer, a Fire 7 tablet from 2019, or a Fire HD 10 tablet, you will have this update and you can just navigate through this really nice looking UI.
Sweet. All right. And what about when I'm in my vehicle? What can I do?
Well, not anything new yet. And I don't know if you have a Mercedes S-Class, but
I do not.
If you, that's why I was careful answering that. If you buy a Mercedes S-Class in 2021, you will actually be able to link it to Samsung SmartThings and then control those things while you're driving at your house or at your office or wherever you've got SmartThings. We haven't seen too many integrations with SmartThings in cars like this. I don't know if any, actually.
I don't know. Y'all can tell us if there have been.
Well, yeah. Mercedes, if you're listening, you can send the review car to my house. Thank you.
Good luck with that, Kevin.
Well, I have a SmartThings hub. I mean, I'm a perfect candidate.
You don't even need the hub anymore. That's kind of the goal of that whole transition. But
yeah, just send the car.
Yeah. All right. Google Home is rolling out with full Nest thermostat controls.
I have to say, I'm laughing because I saw the news and I went to my Google Home app. I'm like, I must have it because there's my controls for the thermostat. And then I thought, wait, I don't have a Nest thermostat. I have an Ecobee, so I've always had the controls.
You're
how sad.
Silly. Yes.
I can't keep track of what I have.
Well, the kind of news here is for the newest thermostat, the brand new $129 one, you're only going to be able to use that in the Google Home app, or it's going to be the primary way. So my hunch is we're going to see the Nest app depreciate over time. What do you think, Kevin?
I would think so, especially, I mean, once they went from works with Nest to works with Google, that was the rating on the wall there.
Yeah. So, hey, it's another thing Google's getting rid of. All right, let's talk about space. We talked about network connectivity being super hot, including satellite connectivity, and SpaceX's Starlink program, which is shooting a whole heck of a lot of satellites into space.
Yeah, a little bit of space junk out there, it looks like.
Jeez. Y'all should research, what is it, Kessler problems? Not the Kessler run.
No, that would be the Kessel run.
Oh, that's the Kessler run. Sorry, the Kessler effect. This is talking, and it's called Kessler syndrome. It's talking about what happens with all the space junk and how once things start to collide, it is a cascading problem. Anyway, that's only if you want to have fun.
We won't be alive for that, don't worry.
Oh, man, I don't know. 2030 is some of the dates. Okay, going on. SpaceX. They're doing the beta test of this so people can try it out. You've got to spend $4.99 for the equipment and then $99 a month for active service. So this isn't actually cheaper than your home broadband, but if you don't have broadband, this might be a good option. And, you know, if you have an IoT device that you're tracking cows in the middle of nowhere, this actually isn't a horribly expensive thing, although we don't know how much. Yeah, if you want backhaul to the middle of nowhere, this might be actually a good device. So yeah,
I mean, for a situation like that, you're probably not tracking one cow, but you're tracking hundreds and hundreds of cows. And, you know, it would be worth, say, $99 a month to get the data up onto the web. And we have to see how the testing goes for the early customers, but the speeds, they're expecting 50 to 150 megabits per second and latency from 20 to 40 milliseconds, which I'm surprised that's pretty low to me.
That does seem low, especially for satellite. So,
but only because I've used true satellite internet way in the past, and it was like a 2-second time of latency. This is low Earth orbit, so it's not going. The signals aren't going 26,000 miles up to a geosynchronous satellite.
How many miles up are they going, Kevin?
It's much lower. It's only 550 kilometers, which is roughly 340 miles. So that's a huge difference in the distance those wireless signals have to travel, bouncing up and back down.
True. Awesome. Okay. And they're smaller satellites. So maybe. Anyway, okay, we're not going to be grim on this show. We're going to be cheery and talk about the latest and greatest Wyze Cam. This is the third version of the Wyze Cam. It launched this week because it's Wyze's birthday week. They are 3 years old this week, I guess. They're like a millennial. They get their birthday for the whole week. So yay, Wyze. Kevin, you've got the camera. What do you think?
I do. This is $20, the same as the old version 2, which was indoor only. This is indoor and outdoor. And I think the best way I could describe it is if the old version 2 indoor camera and the new previously released outdoor camera had a baby, because this is a mishmash of the two. So it is IP65 rated, so you can use it outside. Obviously, you can use it indoors as well. It looks very much like the two had a baby. It's the same Wyze look and feel. It does have a better sensor in it, which I'll get to in a minute. Interestingly, even though you can use this outdoors for $20, it does not come with a battery. So it's got a weatherproof kind of sheathing over the port where you plug in a micro USB cable, but you got to supply power somehow. I used a USB power brick when I tested outside, so I don't know. It would be tough for me to actually use it outside. The mounting is the exact same as their outdoor camera, magnetic, and has a base that you can attach this to. You don't want to use the magnetic base. It's got the same base as the indoor camera that they have. So currently, here's what I'm going to say to people. I would not buy this just yet because it just came out. When I installed it, it installed perfectly fine, but then my Wyze app wouldn't show me anything from it. It looked like I didn't even have it on my network, and I have like 7 or 8 Wyze devices here. So I'm like, that's really odd. I needed to go install beta software. And because of that, I question if the final software is complete. So I think what I would do is wait until that comes out of beta. I'm not saying it's a bad product because it's a Wyze cam. It works. It does everything the other Wyze cams do. You can have local recording with an SD card. There's a weatherproof slot for that. But I noticed in my video feed a little more stuttering than I would normally see from my outdoor Wyze cam. So I'm going to attribute that to the beta software. However, the sensor, which has the standard night mode, which is, your black and white night mode that you would have on any typical outdoor or even indoor camera, it actually records and views in color in the dark. And they say that's because they've got a much better sensor with a wider aperture. It lets more light in. You literally have to turn night vision off to use the sensor that way to get the color night vision. And I'm impressed in general because you can see color for sure. However, in the dark, it's very hard for a camera like this to get the details really fine. So, Stacey, I showed you a video of me walking around in the dark outside, and you kind of commented like, "You look a little blocky," and I took that as not an insult, but a technology thing.
You're such a blockhead, Kevin.
Blockhead. But what did you think of the color?
Oh, the color was lovely. And especially when you told me it was pitch black, it looked like it was sunset. So yeah, very rosy, very good color, especially close up. I really a lot of people use their Wyze cams to catch animal life, watch their pets outside or inside. This would be great for that because your pets, especially if they get close to the camera, they're going to look amazing.
Yeah. So the beta software is really the only hesitation I have to say, yeah, you should get it. Because quite frankly, why pay $20 for an indoor cam when you can pay $20 for an indoor or outdoor cam, provided you want to add power, some way you're on your own. Again, there's no battery here. That's my only hesitation.
Okay. Well, I would say for $20, just buy it and the software will update over time. Ha ha ha. That's just me.
Very IoT thing to say.
Isn't it? You're like, just bring another device onto your network. You can manage it. All right. It is now time for the segment of the show where we try to answer your calls and your questions. It is the Internet of Things podcast hotline. And if you call us with your questions or thoughts, you will be entered to win a smart speaker of your choice. So, well, let me rephrase that. One of the Nest Audio or the Echo 4th generation smart speakers of your choice. And I guess we'll throw in the Apple, although the $99 HomePod, it's not going to be out till November 6th, or it won't be out till later in November. But if you really want that, we can try to order that for you too. Okay. So if you want to be entered to win, give us a call at 512-623-7424. You only have until midnight Eastern on October 31st. So get cracking or dialing or whatever. This week's question is from someone who didn't leave their name, but it's a really good question. So let's hear it.
Hey, Stacey and Kevin. I was wondering if anybody made a smart adapter for a regular light bulb. The reason I'm asking is I have some decorative bulbs that I want to be able to control with out walking over to the switch, and I know I can put a new switch in if I wanted to. I could put a smart switch in. But I'm really looking for some sort of solution that doesn't involve wiring a switch into a new outlet. So I appreciate the answer, and I look forward to hearing from you. Hey, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Good question. I'm going to answer the actual question, then I'm going to give you a little bit of Stacy's thoughts on this. So there are devices that you can buy. They're smart sockets is what you're going to want to look for. iDevices makes one. I tried it out. It was fine. It's kind of bulky. You plug in your smart socket and you screw that into the socket of the lamp, and then you screw your bulb in. So it's basically like an adapter. The iDevices one has this weird purple light kind of effect happening.
It's an LED ring that you can change the color on.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know, if you've got like those like hipstery Edison bulbs in like a industrial setting, I'm not sure the LED ring is going to be your jam.
Yeah, it's not going to go. No.
And it's kind of expensive. It is $37 on Amazon. So it's I think it's usually like $39.99. So that is a reputable brand. Like iDevices, we all know about. There are, however, cheaper other brands. I say other brands because I have never heard of any of them, but they exist and they are in about the $25 to $30 price range. And if you want to test those out and see what happens, go for it.
Well, a lot of them look very similar and are just rebadged. I suspect there's just one place making a whole bunch of these and rebadge them.
But they don't have the LED light ring, which, might be a pro.
This is a good question that I never thought of because I usually just go with smart switches or smart bulbs, mostly smart bulbs. But if I had a special, decorative bulb, I never would have thought to make it smart. And I guess I need to get some decorative bulbs because it's just not something I ever thought of. Yeah.
And, Philips actually makes a connected decorative filament bulb. So that, again, the Edison style filament bulbs, I don't know if LifeX does or not, but those are on the market. But I am going to encourage you, just because I believe in stretching your skills, there is an easier way to switch out your light switch. And I'm going to recommend the C by GE 3-wire smart dimmer switch. And I'm recommending this because it doesn't require a neutral wire. It doesn't require you to identify line versus load. And the installation, yes, you are playing with electricity, but it's, you just turn it off and you connect 3 wires. And it's actually not that difficult to do. I think the light switch itself is kind of hideously ugly, but some people like it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. So, if you want to do it, that's an option. I feel like you can do it. Everyone can do it. I encourage you to do it. And they come in dimmer switch. They have motion sensor and dimmer. They have an on-off paddle and an on-off button. The button is actually not bad. I would put the button in unless you need dimming. So that is the options we have for you. And I am glad you called in. If you would like us to answer your question on the show, give us a call at 512-623-7424. And if you call before Saturday night at midnight Eastern, you will be entered to win a smart speaker of your choice. And now let us stay tuned for a message from our sponsor, and then we'll hear from Nate Clark, who is the CEO of Connected, which is a device that connects your old alarm system to your smart home, which is highly useful. So we'll talk about that. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs, and I have Jake Alamet here with us. Jake is Vice President of Home and Consumer at Silicon Labs, and Jake, I'd love for you to start by telling us a little bit about the company.
Thanks, Stacy, and for having me here. Silicon Labs is the #1 provider of silicon software and solutions for a smarter, more connected world. Award-winning technologies are shaping the future of the Internet of Things and can be found in products all across the spectrum, including many within your own home.
All right. So first off, can you tell me, where is security today in the smart home? And my goodness, where will it need to be in the years to come?
Yeah. Until recently, many IoT device makers regarded IoT security as a nice to have instead of a need to have. But because smart home devices are becoming more and more ubiquitous and being used daily, bad actors are noticing that, and they're more and more exploiting opportunities to break into home networks through their IoT devices. These attacks are accelerating and they're becoming a lot more complex in nature. We saw this trend at Silicon Labs several years ago, and we began innovating and looking at what security solutions we could deliver specifically to protect IoT devices. Our most recent innovation is Secure Vault.
So this year you actually launched Secure Vault. I would love to know a little bit more about what that is.
Secure Vault is a new suite of state-of-the-art security features implemented in our Series 2 products designed to help connected device manufacturers really address their IoT security threats by taking advantage of hardware root of trust, secure debug, physical tamper protections, secure identity with certificates for attestation, and physically unclonable functions embedded in the device to basically greatly reduce the risk of IoT security breaches and compromise intellectual property. It's been reviewed by the IOXT Smart Cert, which is an independent security alliance that's focused on consumer products and services. It's the first wireless SoC product line that has achieved ARM PSA Level 2, which basically assures that it's a proven hardware root of trust from a third party, that third party being ARM. And we also help to ensure that it stays secure by doing independent security evaluations. So we actually did one through Riskier, which was a comprehensive analysis that can be shared with our customers on how secure our solution is.
That sounds awesome. So where can I go to find out more about Silicon Labs and your work there?
Yep, you can find out more at our website at silabs.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Nate Clark, who is the CEO and founder of Connected. Hello, Nate. How are you today?
I'm good. Hey, Stacey.
Oh man, I am so excited to talk to you. I feel like we've been talking about Connected forever on the show, but it has been about 3 years since y'all first did a Kickstarter for the initial product, which was basically a motherboard that you stuck on your existing alarm system and it'll let you connect it to, I'm going to say your smart home, but I think at first it was just Smart Things.
Yeah, that's right. It started out as a Smart Things project, but we've grown a little bit and now have 4 core automation platform integrations: Smart Things, Home Assistant, Hubitat, and OpenHab, and a couple more on the way.
Exciting. So
Yeah.
talk to us about why you decided to create this product and how people responded to it.
Well, I mean, the concept was pretty simple, and it was really born out of my own personal need. And I started the initial work on Connected just to solve my own problem before it ever evolved into a company or a product that I could resell. Basically, I wanted to be able to monitor and control my home from somewhere else through my smartphone and not pay monthly fees for it. And the house that I was living in, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. It had an old wired alarm system, and the landlord was like, "I don't know how that thing works. Do whatever you want with it." And so I did. I took that as license to kind of take it apart, and I realized that the motherboard of the old alarm was kind of an outdated Ademco Vista panel from decades ago, but the wired sensors that go to all the doors and windows and the motion sensor were still good. And I figured there has to be a way to connect those to a smart home platform. I was using Smart Things at the time, and I made that happen. And basically, it's that value proposition of being able to take something that's already in your house, that's old and dumb and analog, and make it new and smart and digital is a huge value proposition for a lot of people, because there are 20 to 30 million homes in North America that have these pre-wired alarm systems, and a lot of them are not in use anymore because they're not convenient to use, and they're not connected to the other things that you have in your house. And so that's really the concept of the product that's resonated well and allowed us to grow into what we are today.
Nice. So when I first played with your product, and admittedly this was, the first one, I was like, oh man, this is like super DIY, because you have to open up your alarm panel, you have to pull out the original motherboard and attach the wires. And it's not hard, but I was like, oh, this is going to be tough for like normal people. I felt like it was too intimidating. So I'm curious. I expected, I guess, a little bit different focus on usability, maybe instead of power over Ethernet. But I see that you're very focused on the DIY people, I'm guessing. But has the intimidating nature of the installation been a roadblock for y'all?
It's a good question, and there is, when you're retrofitting an old wired alarm system, there's no way around the fact that you're going to have to touch some wires. So we can't really pretend like that doesn't exist. It does. It does look intimidating. I agree with that. But the feedback I constantly hear from people, and you can see this in the reviews on our website and on Amazon, is that, oh, well, it looked really complicated, but it was actually so easy, and I make some YouTube videos to kind of walk people through it. It's kind of like a recipe. You follow the recipe, but you have to make some adjustments there for your particular taste or flavor or the way that your house is wired up. But it's not much more complicated than, for example, like a Nest thermostat, where you're actually connecting the device to the pre-existing wiring in your house. Of course, that varies. Like if you have a really big house and you have dozens of sensors, then it gets exponentially a little bit more complicated, but it's not rocket surgery. It's, you figure out which wire goes to which and you write them down, and then that's really all you need to do. There's a surprising appetite for this kind of DIY type of device. And we've, done well selling it direct to consumer DIY, but we're also increasingly selling to dealers and installers. And if you look on our website, connected.io, there's a dealer map. And so we've seen also a growing industry of what I would call like home tech or home automation service providers, or do-it-for-me service providers who are willing to come into your home to, for example, install a Ring doorbell or a Nest thermostat or a connected alarm panel. And that's working out pretty well.
I have seen the rise of those companies, and I'm like, where were you when I needed you?
Yeah. Well, if I could talk a little bit more about the usability, where I think we've been able to make really big improvements is on the software side, on the configuration and setup. I think that's probably what you want to talk about with our recent news from SmartThings.
Oh, taking on the segues here. All right, I like it. Yes, let's talk about what y'all did with SmartThings, because last month you announced that you formally work with SmartThings, even though for like 3 years you've been trying to work with SmartThings, and you used to be able to work with SmartThings.
Yeah, it was a long road. Literally 2.5 years I've been trying to get that Works with SmartThings official stamp of approval, and it finally came basically right after, or maybe it was even during the time frame of our Kickstarter, is when Samsung and SmartThings kind of announced their migration to the new platform, and it's been a long slog. I don't want to get too into the details, but your SmartThings users will know, like the SmartThings Classic app is now gone, and everybody has moved over to the new app. And the app is the thing that most of the end users really see as the big change, but the real change has happened on the back end. They're moving away from their groovy IDE and into more a modern, like cloud-based API for device manufacturers and integrators to build stuff into the SmartThings ecosystem. Initially it was a little bit frustrating, but after embracing their new cloud infrastructure, what I realized is that we can really make a seamless and easy to set up user experience for connecting your connected alarm panel into SmartThings. And also, in addition, because our product is Wi-Fi or network-based, the SmartThings hub is no longer a necessity. And that's actually part of SmartThings' strategy, is to get people using SmartThings even without a hub. So you don't need to buy the SmartThings hardware anymore to use their app for free with Connected. So that really lowers the cost and barrier of entry to your average homeowner who may be just getting started on their home automation journey, and they have maybe a voice assistant or a thermostat or maybe some lights, and want to get their alarm system and all that stuff. With Connected and SmartThings, you can get all of that in kind of one package with just one purchase.
Yes, that is awesome. And we have had a lot of give and take here about the SmartThings shift. And I'm just curious, as a partner of theirs, formally now, congratulations, What do you think of the changes? Like the idea of being able to control what is on your platform or can really access your platform via APIs makes a lot of business sense for something like SmartThings, right? But it really does upset a lot of diehard users who probably buy your product.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I'm a little bit torn, but you have to kind of understand from not only just Samsung's perspective, but also from a technical perspective. I mean, they're trying to build a sustainable platform that can scale beyond what SmartThings originally was, which was also a Kickstarter project, I think, almost 10 years ago. And so there were a lot of technical challenges and infrastructural challenges with the Groovy IDE and allowing kind of like anybody and everybody to write scripts and code and stuff like that for it. And it just created a lot of challenges. So I think from that perspective, they've made the right decision to standardize it and create an open infrastructure for partners and developers to build stuff on SmartThings. But yeah, it's different. I mean, in order for Connected to move to the new SmartThings infrastructure, I had to build our own cloud service in order to talk to it because it's a completely different architecture. So yeah, I understand it is frustrating. I think SmartThings is, as a Samsung brand, it is clearly, they're focused on the mass market consumer, and maybe for the super hardcore enthusiasts, maybe SmartThings is not really the platform for them anymore, and maybe that's okay because there are other very customizable or flexible platforms like Home Assistant or Habitat, and I embrace those too, and that's kind of part of my mentality for Connected is that I don't want to play favorites or have any sort of like brand or vendor lock-in. Our hardware can be used on any of these platforms, and that's a big selling point. I mean, I get this question a lot, like, well, what happens when, if SmartThings goes away, or if Connected disappears, or if your cloud service goes down? And I'm like, well, then you could switch to a different platform, and the hardware will still work. So it will never become a brick. And we've seen a lot of users switch from SmartThings to something, or even something back to SmartThings. So it's overall good for the home automation industry and community because they're creating something that's more accessible to more people, even if it's not the thing for all the people, if that makes sense.
Oh, that was so graceful. I love it. And I'm with you on pretty much all of your points.
Okay.
Not that it matters. Okay. And speaking of maturity in the smart home space and bringing it to more people, there's an effort underway called Project Connected Home over IP, Project CHIP, and Samsung is totally a part of that. And the idea being to help create kind of a standard, an interoperability standard for the smart home. And I'm just curious, is that something you're part of, you're following, you're excited about?
I am aware of it. To be honest, I have not spent too much effort to fully grok what they're trying to do, and maybe, it's a little bit too early for me to be super involved in that. But I totally support the idea of open interoperability and standards. And I really have to praise Samsung for being really good about that. I know from a lot of just seeing comments on the groups and the forums and stuff like that, a lot of people think that the Samsung migration or the SmartThings migration is kind of like some kind of money grab or move in the wrong direction away from interoperability by Samsung. But I don't think that that's true at all. I've attended the last 3 Samsung developer conferences and have personal relationships with a lot of the Samsung or the SmartThings employees and developers. And they are all very committed, both personally and as an organization, to working with other partners and being an open platform. The definition of open platform is maybe a little bit different. It's not like, oh, just anybody can inject code into the SmartThings platform anymore. There's a little bit more structure to it, but that doesn't mean that they're closing it off or anything like that. So I definitely praise Samsung for doing that and being on the forefront. But I'm with regards to that standards organization or body, I don't have too much opinion on that yet.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's talk about your business model because we're seeing a lot of these smaller companies, especially, encounter roadblocks in that they were like, oh, crikey, we have to pay cloud costs. We have to pay developers to keep updating this device. And I sold it for $100, 5 years ago. What do I do? So I'm curious if you are aware of that kind of going into building the business. It probably maybe not because it was a hobby and what you're thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I wouldn't say it's something that keeps me up at night, but it is something that I am continuously thinking about. Yes, when you're selling a hardware product that's like a one-time purchase that somebody has to continue to use with your cloud infrastructure, then there, of course, is continuing costs for that customer. And so that's something that I'm certainly aware of. And our SmartThings cloud, our cloud infrastructure is new. I just launched it earlier this year. And it's all built on Amazon Web Services. We're using AWS IoT, AWS Lambda, and then Cognito and a couple other little things here and there. So that makes it quite affordable and scalable. But yeah, there's still cost there, and so I do have a plan for kind of making this more sustainable. And well, first of all, not all of our customers are using the cloud infrastructure because right now it's only connecting with SmartThings. So those who are using Home Assistant or Habitat or OpenHab or one of the other local platforms that we're working on next will never hit our cloud infrastructure, and so that's not a concern for me or for them because it all communicates locally on their network, and we'll never take that away. That's one of the key selling points, especially for a security or home monitoring product, is that sometimes you don't want external dependencies like on a cloud service or even an internet connection. And so that's a key selling point for those platforms. But the consumer platforms like SmartThings, there is a cloud component, and plan for that is that the basic service will always be free, but we are considering some value-added services that may have subscription capabilities to add into that I think will help to offset the cost. The first of those is one thing that we've partnered with Noonlight for a couple of years now, and Noonlight is essentially like a API for 911 services. And so, for example, if your connected alarm is triggered, it will send a signal to a dispatch center, and then Noonlight will be able to contact the authorities to send help to your house. So that's a value add optional subscription service. Actually, I'm rolling out the next version of it very, very soon here within the connected cloud, and I think that's $10 a month. And so that some of that goes to Noonlight, and we also have a revenue share with them. And then there are other similar things on that kind of idea, optional subscription services that we can add that add value and also will help us kind of offset the sustainability costs.
Got it. Okay, that's a good plan. I like it. And let's go with our final question, which is, what advice would you have for people who are trying to build, a smaller product maybe into a highly competitive space dominated by really big brands?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, what was really helpful and probably critical was that support early on from the community. And early on, it was the SmartThings community, and then quickly branched out into the Home Assistant community. And I personally was active on the forums, like the SmartThings community forum, and throughout the Kickstarter, just being transparent about what you're trying to do and why why there's value to you or to everybody because I'm doing this. That's kind of the approach that you have to take as an entrepreneur, as a small company trying to make something, because then you'll gain that kind of goodwill and support. And so I've always tried to be transparent and open, and not just in the way that we communicate, but in the way that our products communicate with the ecosystem. So I think that's really the best advice, is to really tap in emotionally to that community of hardcore users, whether it's the SmartThings community or Home Assistant community or Google community or whatever it is, and then grow from there.
All right, Nate, that's great advice. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome. It was great. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.